Hi, this is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and today I'm going to be covering a game by Magnus Carlsen of Norway against Hikaru Nakamura of the United States, and this was a game played at the Tata Steel Classic, which was taking place instead of Wick and Z, a yearly super tournament in Iceland, which I believe is being canceled for 2012 due to some lack of sponsorship. So getting on with it, Carlsen played an interesting sideline, and for anyone who keeps up with chess tweets, I recently played this move G4, well, a different variation. I played the immediate G4 here. Carlsen played bishop E3, which actually seems to be sneakier and more flexible. So I like that move a little bit more. And after castles, which seems to be pretty standard, now G4, which more or less transposes into the game that I've got going on with chess tweets right now, as of April 16th, 2011. So anyway, G4 coming up, and it's very aggressive. And as Black has already castled here, it's a very good move. Things would be a little different if Black had played knight D7, knight BD7 before, or even B5, I guess was possible, or bishop E6. But with castles, G4 is very effective because it's no longer possible to play any H6, as it would be a move before. Just taking a quick look. If bishop E6, which is also played in the Najdorf here, if G4 here, now H6, and all of a sudden Black is, you know, kind of winning on this H file somewhat with this X-ray with H6. So after castles, that's not the case, and H6 is no longer possible. So Black is going to be defending, and White's going to kind of seize the initiative here. And H4 immediately. Knight B6. So Black's plan is going to be pretty simple. He's going to be taking control of that C4 square with a knight, most likely. He's also fighting to push for D5. And it's rather unclear whether he wants to play F5 sometime to open the game up, or, you know, if he wants to bring the knight to C6 or D7 yet, or possibly Queen C7 first. So these are not entirely clear. So knight D7. So he's really going to be fighting for that knight to C4, that C4 square, and F4. So Carlsen is really just going for it with F4. I think castle queenside was a more flexible alternative because it gives Black a chance if he wants to move the knight, and then F4, but it most likely just transposes, so probably no difference. Just opening that square up for Black to come to E5 makes things, I just feel like it makes the decision easier for Black, and especially now because it's opened up that C4 square, giving Black some pretty solid counterplay. Some standard moves. King B1, always nice to tuck the king when you castle queenside. And Queen C7. So Black really wants to play D5, and if he can play D5, he's going to have a very, very free game, I guess you could say. It's going to be a little tougher for White to attack him. The drawback of Black's position is that he did not play B5, and so it's very difficult for him to attack on the queen side without being able to move his, you know, A and B pawns forward. So Black is going to have to rely on piece play, and essentially he's relying solely on putting a knight, most likely, on the C4 square. Whereas White is going to most likely bring the other rook over and attempt to force through with G and H pawns, not allowing Black to close the position there. So some more standard moves. Carlsen is very good at this, sensing when the battle's about to happen, but there's a quiet before the storm, and he tucks his king. So it's kind of strange to see from such a young player that kind of maturity, to that kind of patience to tuck the king, and kind of, you know, most players would rush forward with G6, for example, bring the rook straight over, but he tucks the king and gets really readies all of his pieces, and now begins to transfer the knight to the king side. Is definitely a good idea. And with Queen C5, this is it makes sense. I guess black isn't in such a hurry to seize the c4 square because it's going to allow bishop takes, and white can swing the queen over to g2 or the queen or the king side a little easier. So with g6, white says, okay, enough is enough. Let's bust it open. Let's stop the playing around. And black, Nakamura agrees with knight c4. And now queen d3. Important to note, if queen g2 here, for example, knight takes b2 and white's position would collapse. So queen d3. And now it's very clear this pawn on g6 is going to be quite a hamper in black's position. And white really wants to just sack that bishop on h6. No doubt about it. It's just a matter of, if it works. And it feels like it should, but it's tough to calculate exactly, and if so, when. That's the main idea. He's got to sacrifice on h6. So queen b6, obviously introducing a mating 1, and bishop c1 in response. Now queen a5, interesting. Possibly some knight takes b2, rook takes c3, and queen takes a2 ideas here. But apparently nothing concrete. And knight e5 still introducing the threat of rook takes c3. Knight e5 also a great square for the knight to defend. Knight d5 takes and takes. And all of a sudden, white sacrificed a pawn, but his king is no longer under attack and is very safe. And in consequence, Carlsen just instantly sacks. Well, now he's got two pieces. The knight on d4 and the bishop on h6 are in pre. So this must be decisive. But I mean, it seems pretty tough. I mean, for example, bishop e3 now if queen takes d4, and I don't see how black is going to stop the threat of rook h8 check and queen h2. Let's say queen g4 check, queen h2, call it a day. So white's attack is very dangerous. That g6 pawn, rook controlling the f-file, cutting off the king, another rook penetrating on the h-file, and the queen's right there to help out too. So now Nakamura takes, and maybe I think he had underestimated what was happening here because he was still moving fairly quickly. Naka had about 6 minutes, Carlsen about 10. Carlsen down a full rook here for one pawn. But black's king is awfully lonely. Bishop f6. Trying to open up some counter threats. Obviously, rook takes. Rook e1 is mate. Queen takes. This is a very tough position to play. I can't say exactly what Nakamura was planning here. It's very, very tough to say exactly. Because any moving the queen, this isn't going to work. So, going back, bishop f6, a little tough to verify without a computer analysis. And after queen h8 and rook e1, a nice move, a nice touch. And here Nakamura resigned because moving the king leads to mate instantly, and blocking, this is just not going to work. White's going to win this endgame all day very easily. So a fantastic game by Carlsen. An interesting line with the early bishop e2, bishop e3, and g4 against the Najdorf. And Nakamura tried to stir up some counterplay, but the #1 rated player in the world, Magnus Carlsen of Norway, the Norwegian Wunderkind, was simply too precise. So this is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and thanks for tuning in.